Okay, Mystery on Mackinac Island, Chapter 1, The Bicycle Mystery. When 13-year-old Hunter heard that bicycles were being stolen day after day on the island where he lived, he couldn't have cared less. He had enough problems already. For years, the Indian boy had lived with his grandfather deep in the woods of Mackinac. But now the old chief was dead, and Hunter's special world of woods and wildlife came crashing down around him. As the teenager and his father walked away from the pine-shaded cemetery on Mackinac Island in Michigan, Tim said, "It's okay, son. You can come live in the village with Bella and me and her kids." "I don't want to," Hunter said. "I want to stay in Grandfather's cabin." "That's impossible," his father answered. "I can't give you any money, and Grandfather's pension has stopped." "I'll work," Hunter said. "There's lots of jobs in the tourist season." "You can't get a work permit. You're still too young." "I will find work," Hunter insisted, "and I will live where I want to live." At last, after more arguing, Tim finally gave in. "Okay, try it for the summer, but when school starts, you will move in with us, and that's final." Tim turned toward the village, calling out, "Be sure to lock your bike. If it gets stolen, you're going to be out of luck." Hunter headed for the cabin, glowing with a sense of victory. The rest of the summer would be his. That afternoon, Hunter rode his bicycle toward the harbor to look for work. As he passed old Fort Mackinac on the bluff above the city of Mackinac Island, he saw tourist bikes left outside the walls, and he remembered his father's warning. Well, he always locked his bike. He knew it wouldn't be stolen. When he had coasted down the hill to Main Street and had parked his bike behind the library, he went in to tell Mrs. Purcell about needing a job. She had been his friend since he had learned to read. She might be able to help. The small, gray-haired librarian listened thoughtfully as Hunter explained the situation. "If I hear of a job," she said, "I will put the cedar waxwing in the front window as a signal. When you see it, come in." Hunter grinned. He had found that little bird, the cedar waxwing, dead outside the library window when he was only 9 years old. Because he had felt so bad about it being killed, Mrs. Purcell had had it stuffed and mounted and kept on her desk. Today he marveled again at the beauty and exquisite colors, and the bird gave him hope. Still, there were butterflies in his stomach as he went to the Chippewa Hotel, nearest to the ferry docks. It seemed dark in there, and he felt as if the walls were closing in on him. With a dry mouth, he asked the woman behind the desk about a job. She waved him to another door that was partly open. Inside, there was a man with a mustache who was working at a littered desk. Looking up, he said with a grouchy voice, "What do you want?" "A job," Hunter said. "Any experience?" Hunter shook his head no. "How old are you?" 13, Hunter answered. "Sorry, you can't get a work permit until you're 16. Hunter went out, almost glad that had turned out bad. He couldn't imagine working in a building like that, with strangers who came to the island only to make money. They didn't love Mackinac Island like he did. Out in the sunshine again, he started to feel better. Crowds of tourists were milling around on the sidewalks, and in the street, horse-drawn carriages, big and small, were on the move. Dozens of cyclists on rented bikes were trying to make their way through the traffic. There were no cars. On Mackinac Island, the only motorized vehicles were the doctor's wagon and the fire engine. Hunter crossed the street to the Murray Hotel, hoping for better luck there. It was not as dark as the Chippewa Hotel, and the manager seemed more friendly, but Hunter was told again, "We just can't hire a 13-year-old. That's what he heard everywhere he went. Hotels, boarding houses, up and down Main and Market streets. Hunter was tall and strong for his age. He thought he could make people believe he was 16, but in his head he heard his grandfather tell him again and again, "Never speak with a forked tongue." He knew that was an Indian phrase meaning "don't tell a lie." He tried the souvenir and specialty stores, and the shops where the famous Mackinac fudge was made and sold, but there was no luck anywhere. By this time, all Hunter wanted to do was just go home. Home. As he thought of that snug cabin tucked away in the woods, he knew he had to live there. It would be lonely, but at least he would be living close to the wild animals and the birds, as he and Grandfather had always done. In Harrisville, with his family, he would have no chance to study the birds. He had to earn money. Where should he go to look next? At the far end of Main Street was the Beacon Light Motel. Its manager was an island man, not a stranger. Maybe he would help, but the boy's hopes were low as he pushed his way through the crowd of tourists in that direction. This hotel was painted white with green trim and was more like an oversized summer cottage than a hotel. It faced the lake and had wide, welcoming porches above a green lawn. Mr. French, the manager, was a small, brown-haired man and was standing at the door. He greeted Hunter warmly. "I'm very sorry about your grandfather," he said. "With the old chief gone, Mackinac isn't going to be the same. He was our link to the past." There was a sudden lump in Hunter's throat that kept him from speaking. The man's eyes searched his face. "Can I help you with something?" he asked. Swallowing the lump, Hunter said, "I need work, and I need it bad." Mr. French cocked one eyebrow. "Your father didn't lose his job again, I hope." "No," came the answer. "I have to earn money so I can stay in the cabin. I don't want to live with Dad and Bella and her kids." Surprised, Mr. French said, "But why not? They're your family." "I know," Hunter mumbled, dropping his eyes. "I tried it once, but Bella made fun of me, and her girls got in my hair, so I went back to live with grandfather." I see," said Mr. French slowly. "And now with the new baby, I bet their house is more crowded than ever." Hunter just nodded. "Well," the manager went on, "come back in a couple days. You can mow the lawn, and I'll save some other jobs for you." "Gee, thanks, Mr. French. I'm coming back on Saturday," Hunter promised, turning to go. "Wait," Mr. French exclaimed, his face lighting up. "I just thought of something better. This afternoon, the owners of the bike rental shop announced a reward for $50 for anyone who could find all the stolen bikes, and another $50 for the arrest of the thief. You should try that." Excitement zipped through Hunter. Grandfather had taught him how to track animals to their holes. He could use those same skills to stalk the bicycle thief to his den. It would be fun, and he would get $100 for doing it. "How about it?" Mr. French asked. "You bet. That'll be a breeze." "Ooh, don't be so sure," Mr. French warned him. "This man is smart. He has already picked up more than a dozen bikes without leaving any trace." "It's not smart to steal rental bikes," Hunter announced. "They can be identified easily with their ID numbers and license tags." Mr. French responded. "He can yank off the tags and paint off the ID numbers. But how does he snatch the bikes without being seen? Where does he store them until he can take them off the island to sell?" "I don't know," Hunter admitted slowly, "but I am going to find out. I know what I'll do. I'll get all the details I can from the rental shops, and then I'll lay out a plan of action." After a quick goodbye to Mr. French, Hunter went with wings on his feet to the shop of his old friend Emmett on Market Street. Emmett was an islander. Hunter found him crouching down, putting a new tire on a bike. His weather-beaten face creased into a smile. "Hey, Emmett," Hunter said. "Say, have any of your bikes been stolen?" The friendly smile gave way to a scowl. "You better believe it," he growled. "4 of them." "Well," Hunter said, "I want to have a shot at finding them. Can you help me?" As he spoke, he drew out of his jeans pocket a pencil and a notebook that he used when he studied birds. He began asking questions and writing down Emmett's answers, making note of the ID and license numbers and the colors of Emmett's missing bikes. Also, when and where they had disappeared. 2 had been taken from near Sugarloaf, 1 just outside the fort and 1 below Arch Rock. The story was always the same. The tourist had left the bike for just a minute, and when he turned around, the bike was gone. From Emmett's, it was only a short walk to Mr. Piperman's shop on Main Street. There, Hunter got details of more stolen bikes. The more he heard, the more excited he got about trying to outwit the bicycle thief. The 2 hotels that rented bikes were farther away, so he hurried to the library for his bike. As he unlocked it, he decided he ought to tell Mrs. Purcell how he was going to earn a lot of money, but tomorrow would be soon enough. Hunter rode east on Lakeshore Boulevard, past Marquette Park, and to the fort above it. To Island House. After making notes of their losses, he went back through town to the Grand Hotel, which faced the western shore. It was big and white and impressive. Hunter was glad the bike rental shop was turned in the back. There, he filled more pages in his notebook, and then he started towards home. He rode the village, but did not stop to see his dad. He was too busy trying to work things out in his mind. He asked himself these questions. Why were rented bikes stolen, but not private bikes? Was the thief an island man who didn't want or dare to steal bikes from people he knew? But an islander seemed riding a rented bike would be spotted by the people who knew him. No, the thief must be a stranger, acting like a tourist. He could ride a stolen bike to his hideout without being noticed. So how would Hunter spot him? There was no easy answer to this question. After riding through the center of the island, Hunter reached a spot where on the right the trees gave way to a grassy area. There, he found the historic marker that said Battlefield of 1814. Nearby was an ancient empty house where soldiers wounded in the battle between the American and the British had been taken care of. Opposite the house was an inconspicuous narrow trail that led through the woods to the old chief's cabin. The two-room cabin was very old, built of well-chinked logs and covered with a board siding that had weathered into a soft gray color. Hunter leaned his bike against the small porch, thinking that this house was his ticket to the outdoor life he loved. He put the key in the lock and then hesitated. It was hard to go in, knowing Grandfather was not there waiting for him with his wisdom and his special kind sense of humor and unspoken but warm love. Well, Hunter decided, opening the door, better to be here alone than in Dad's noisy house in the village. If he found the stolen bikes quickly, he would have the rest of the summer for bird watching. If he caught the thief, maybe he could even persuade his dad that he was smart enough to look after himself, even when school started.